Bismillah wa salatu wa salam wa rasulullah wa ba'd. So, I have a question here. The brother says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah guide us and grant us understanding of His religion. Ameen. I really like your videos, Akhi. It is very informative. Barakallah feek. Wa feekum barakallah. I want to ask you if you can make a video to advise the brothers here in Holland. Some of the brothers are very harsh and don't use kindness and wisdom in this fitna. Jazakallah khair, akhir kareem. Okay, so this particular question has been asked quite a bit, and I had to actually think about this, how I'm going to approach this question, because so many different tulab and ulama, they've answered this question many times, and these times of fitna, it's kind of like, how can we reach the youth? Because certain personalities they just won't listen to. They'll ignore certain personalities in favor of other ones, right? So, for example, if Mufti Munir says it, Mathalan, Mufti Munir, they just won't listen to him. They'd rather listen to somebody like Abu Khadija. So, I was thinking about how can I approach this question, inshallah. So, what I wanted to do was approach this in a completely different light. And how the first thing I wanted to do was mention how Sheikh Rabee, rahimullah, how he was. And when he was around, rahimullah, how we were taught by the Sheikh Rabee, rahimullah. And he would always say that the manhaj of the Salaf is based upon two things, as two pillars. The first one is tasfiyah, and the second one is tarbiyah. And wallahi, before I approach this question, I made wudu, I prayed 2 rakats. I tried to find even Sheikh Albani's lectures online, and I ask Allah to forgive us, the brothers who are older, for not tackling this issue earlier and not preserving with vigor the statements of our shayukh, like because we had all these things translated, all these things that were making the dawah good and grow. We had them, and we basically fell victim to what the Sa'afaka were doing. So I ask Allah to forgive us, and inshallah we will be able to spread Islam the way that Allah will be pleased with. But at any rate, Shaykh Albani rahimahullah, he said that the pillars of the manhaj are tasfiyah wa tarbiyah, where tasfiyah is the purification of the religion of Islam from all elements which are foreign from it. This is tasfiyah. And tarbiyah is the cultivation of the Muslims upon that which is right and correct. So we have, for example, the Sufis, they have all the tarbiyah. All the tarbiyah is with the Sufis. They have like the good manners and the akhlaq and the smiling and with each other's faces, and the brotherhood, and they have like amazing tarbiyah. But when it comes to tasfiyah, it's like zero. And then when it comes to the brothers from the South Africa, for example, or the Khawarij or whatever, they have the tasfiyah. They are basically refuting people and refuting groups and making sure there's no bid'ah in the religion, and calling the people to the sunnah and whatnot. But when it comes to tarbiyah, they have little to none of it. So how is it that we can reach these brothers who have very bad manners? And I will tell you from what Sheikh Albani rahimahullah, he said that you have to have both. You have to have the tarbiyah and the tasfiyah, right? And the tarbiyah of the brothers from the Sa'afat is essentially that of taking some of the statements of the Salaf, which are not applicable today, and applying them to the people of today. So, for example, um, we may not. Some of the Salaf used to say we may not know if somebody's bid'ah is hidden from us, then his companions are not hidden, and things of this nature, right? Which would be applicable, for the first 300-400 years at the time of the Salaf, right? But when you're living in the West and you're living in places like Canada or the U.S. or Britain or whatnot, and the vast majority of the Muslims are not from Ahlul Sunnah, are you going to isolate yourself from all these Muslims? Does that make any sense? No. And even we have stories from the ulema, like legit stories that will establish my point here, right? And I'll give you one story from our Sheikh Rabee bin Haadi al-Madkhali, Hafidhullah. Okay, and this is why I chose him for this particular story, because he's he has a reputation for being harsh, as particular in his books, right? But even me, I met the Sheikh, I didn't particularly see any harshness from him, right? However, when he writes his books, yeah, he has definitely has an element of harshness to him. But when he goes to make dawah to the people, he has the most hikmah. Like, it's unbelievable the amount of hikmah the Sheikh has, right? And I'll give you an example, right? So Sheikh Rabee, and he has the story online. I'll try to find the link and I'll put it in the description, inshallah, if I can find it, right? So Sheikh Rabee, when he was younger, he would get invited to different countries like India and places in Africa and whatnot to make dawah, right? And this is when the dawah was growing very well. So he got invited to go to Sudan several times anyway. And one of he's telling the story, right? So I'm just relaying from what I heard, and I'll try to post the link, inshallah. So he's saying that the brothers who invited him to go to this masjid in a village there in Sudan, they said, Sheikh, when you go to this village, don't mention anything about Sufiya, because the people there are Sufis. And if you talk about Sufiya to these people, they will reject you immediately. Don't say anything about the Sufiya. Don't say anything about Salafiyya. Don't say anything about Tariqa or anything like that. And he said, okay, it's no problem. So I want you guys to understand this. Sheikh Rabee bin Haadi al-Madkhali was on his way to a Sufi masjid. And I think in the cassette, he mentioned these people were like extreme Sufis, like the ones with the qabr and stuff like that. But don't hold my neck to that. If it's not there, then forgive me, right? But I will post the link, right? So, but what was clear is that they were Sufi, like no joke Sufi in Sudan, okay? And he's going to make dawah in a Sufi masjid. So I want you to stop right here. Just stop, right? These brothers from our brothers who are harsh, if you told them that you're going to go to a Sufi masjid to make dawah, what's the first thing they're going to tell you? Yeah, exactly. They're going to tell you, don't go to the masjids of Ahlul Bid'ah, right? Sheikh Rabee is doing it, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is they put restrictions on the Sheikh of what he can and cannot say. That's the second point, okay? They restricted the Sheikh's kalam to very specific things. He's not allowed to talk about Sufis. He's not allowed to talk about Salafis. He's not allowed to talk about those things which will cause the people, once they hear those words, that they will instantly reject anything that he has to say. And the Sheikh, the third point is that the Sheikh agreed to all of this. Sheikh Rabee bin Haadi al-Madkhali. Okay, so now the Sheikh is in Sudan. He's going to the masjid, and what does he do? He starts quoting ayats from the Quran. He starts quoting hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, right? That's all he did. And he made the people love the Sunnah from this, just from quoting ayats of Quran and hadith and like this, right? And without being harsh at all. So now, when he finishes his talk, the Imam of that masjid starts opposing him, right? And some things, some of his arguments. So you know what Sheikh Rabee, he said in front of everybody, he was not insulting the Imam. He said, well, I was saying, call Allah, call Rasulullah, and did you bring anything from call Allah, call Rasulullah? That was it. So he leaves. The next day, those same people, those same Sufis at that masjid, kicked that Imam out of their masjid, and they accepted Salafiyah. And I want you guys to, I really want you guys to hear this story. But the point is that this is Dawah to Salafiyah. Calling the people with hikmah, not insulting their personalities or the way that they do things. Call the people to the haqq, and the people will accept it. As a matter of fact, the message of the Salaf is from the fitrah. People naturally will be inclined to it if you apply it properly. And part of that application is good manners. Dawah in itself is not just speaking. It's also the way that you act and the way that you are with the people. So I remember when I was talking to a brother online, right, on YouTube, and I told him about Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah. And one questioner asked Sheikh bin Baz about his worship, right, because he was a well-known abid. He would not, like, he would just sleep rarely. People would rarely see him sleeping. Whenever he was not speaking, even if you look at some of his lectures, you will always see his mouth going up and down like this, right? When he's not speaking, his mouth is going like this. That's him making dhikr. He doesn't stop. He just doesn't stop. He never stopped. Whenever he wasn't saying anything, he would be like, Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, he would always be like that, right? So somebody asked Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah about his worship, and then you know what the Sheikh said? Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah, what he said? He says that every single night he goes to sleep and he doesn't hold anything in his heart against any of his opponents. You know how people spoke bad about Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah, right? And I mentioned in my historical series about how Sheikh bin Baz, after the Gulf War, the Takfiris, they came after him, right? And they said that he's a government stooge, and they said he's a scholar for dollar, and all this kind of nonsense. They made takfir on him, right? All this kind of craziness, right? And this is one of the things I mentioned. Well, from the blessings of Allah, to silence the takfiris about the Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah, because Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah never spoke about anybody from the Muslims, right? And in his lifetime, he spoke about 3 people in his life, right, that I know of anyway, right? He talked about Hafid Assad, and he talked about Saddam Hussein, and he talked about Muammar Gaddafi. These are the only people in his life he ever made takfir of. All 3 of them deserving of him. Hafid Assad, he's Alawi, and he slaughtered the people of the Sunnah there in Syria, and after that, Sheikh bin Baz made takfir of him. Saddam Hussein, we know about Saddam Hussein and his Ba'ath party and putting communism over Islam. And Muammar Gaddafi, he basically changed the Quran. You know the 4 quls. Muammar Gaddafi, he took out the quls because He said, Muammar Qaddafi said, this is Allah speaking to the Prophet ﷺ saying, Qul hu Allahu ahad. So you don't need that call, just say Allahu ahad. So he himself ordered the Qur'ans to take out that call and put Allahu ahad. So for these reasons, changing the Quran, killing the Muslims, accepting a rule other than the rule of Allah, Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah made takfir on 3 people in his life, which is it's a hujjah against the takfiris themselves, right? So at any rate, the point is Sheikh bin Baz, Sheikh Albani, and Sheikh Uthaymeen never were ever in their lives ever accused of harshness, ever, never. And from the Prophet ﷺ, Dhul Khuwaisra, if you don't know who Dhul Khuwaisra is, Dhul Khuwaisra, he's known as the father of the Khawarij. And when the Prophet ﷺ was handing out, one day when he was handing out the war booty, Dhul Khuwaisra was there, and Prophet ﷺ gave him something, and Dhul Khuwaisra said to the Prophet ﷺ, Adilli ya Muhammad, be just, O Muhammad. Be just, O Muhammad. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ said, woe be unto you if I'm not just, and who is there to be just in the dunya? So Dhul Khuwaisra grabbed the Messenger of Allah by his neck and started choking him until the Prophet ﷺ started giving him more, and then he left, right? So, of course, the Sahaba are there. They're ready to kill this man, right? And the Prophet ﷺ had to gesture so they would not raise their swords against him, right? So, if there's ever a time in the life of the Prophet ﷺ for him to be harsh, it would have been that time, but he didn't. So, Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, told the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, allow me to remove his head from his neck. So the Prophet ﷺ told Umar, Ya Umar, do you want the people to say that Muhammad kills his people? So now, in terms of harshness, do you want the people to say that the Salafis don't have manners? And the people say that. Why? Because those who claim Salafiyah don't have manners. They wouldn't say that for no reason. When you're making dawah, you're not just representing yourself, you're representing the religion at large. And if people see you as not having manners on a large scale, then guess what? You don't have manners. So for us, what is upon us is not to allow anybody to beat us in those things that we've been commanded by Allah and His Messenger in terms of manners, in terms of character, in terms of truthfulness and honesty, right? This is not permissible for us because all these things we've been commanded to. If you're Salafi, you have to be truthful. You must. It's how can you call yourself Salafi and you're lying? How is that possible? Right? Did the Salaf lie? Was that their manhaj? Right? How are you gonna call yourself Salafi and you have bad manners? Name one time ever the Prophet ﷺ was ever accused of bad manners, or Abu Bakr, or even Umar. You can't. So the Salaf were not like that. So I want to leave you with this because, like I said, I did think about this before I started speaking. So what I did for myself, because like I said, this question's been asked a lot. So I broke down 5 points just from myself, right? So you can just from like something that I personally follow. You can take it or you don't have to take it. Right? This is my personal approach, right? And how not to be harsh, right? If you follow these 5 things, I promise you, right? Harshness will leave you, okay? I promise you, right? So the from the bottom up. So point number 5 would be humbleness and saying I don't know when you actually don't know. The thing is when you're making dawah, and sometimes people get stuck when they're making dawah, especially when they want to talk about groups and whatnot. And in reality, it's not your job to clarify the groups or whatnot. This is the job of the ulema, right? So when somebody comes to you and they bring you a point in Akira or something like that, and you don't know, just say I don't know. Imam Malik or Himallah, uh, some uh, some of the people from Africa at the time of Imam Malik who accepted his method, they came to visit him all the way from Africa. They traveled like 3 or 4 months to see Imam Malik to get fatwa from him about I think 60 issues or something like that, a list of issues that they wanted, right? So they went to Imam Malik, rahimahullah, and for all these issues, Imam Malik's like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So the questioner told Imam Malik, he's like, yeah, Imam, we traveled all the way from such and such a place, and we traveled for like 3 months or however long it was, and now you're telling us I don't know. And Imam Malik, he said, you go to the mountain and you shout out on top of the mountain and say that Imam Malik says La Adri. They say Imam Malik says that I don't know. Right? So that's the first point. Don't answer questions that you just don't have the answer to. Right? The fourth point is to recognize that the goal isn't about personalities or yourself. So, what do I mean by that? Any personality that you attach to yourself and that you love more than Allah will eventually break your heart. Eventually, it's going to cause you despair and sadness once you start attaching yourself to a person, no matter who it is. The blind following of people or the love of people over Allah will always, always cause you sadness, because Allah has created us for the worship of Him and not for the worship of other people. So now these brothers, especially the brothers who are harsh, they're like that because of the tarbiyah that they've been given from personalities like Abu Khadija, personalities like what you call it, Amjad Rafiq, and these type of people, right? Anwar Wrights and people who are overly harsh. So when you approach them with the truth, their first reaction is to what? To defend the personality, right? That's their first reaction, right? So, and likewise, for us Salafis, if somebody came to us from, like, for example, the Sufiya now, and they started speaking against Sheikh Albani, rahimahullah, and started saying that Sheikh Albani didn't have no teachers, our first reaction is to get triggered, right? And to defend Sheikh Albani, rahimahullah, right? But you got to understand that Islam is not like that. Islam is not about defending personalities. Islam is about worshiping Allah only with this under the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. So if they speak about people, or if they accuse people, or if they accuse even you of lying, of if they accuse you of being dishonest, and if accuse you of being disingenuous or whatever, never take that personal. Like, never. Because that is them expressing their emotion to the things that they're really attached to. So what is more important for you is once you start attaching yourself to Allah more than the personalities, Allah will always give you victory all the time. All the time. It doesn't make a difference who it is, right? It's not our religion to defend Sheikh Albani per se. We have enough people who can do that. What our religion is to worship Allah. You see what I'm saying? So do that, right? And don't make yourself the what you call it, the be all and end all in dealing with people. Make Allah the be all and end all of dealing with people. Make Allah's religion high and mighty. Make what Allah sent in the Quran and the Sunnah. Give this precedence over everybody and everything. What if you can do that? If you can do that, then you will not take anything that anybody tells you personally. And as for me myself, I have a lot of trolls, right? I have a lot of people, from this YouTube calling me liar, calling me disingenuous, calling me I'm saying I'm following the flutes of shaitan and everything that. Well, I don't lose not even a second of sleep for these insults, not one. And every night I forgive everybody for all the things that they say about me unjustly, because I know that they're saying that as a reaction to me putting brothers out there like Abu Yad, for example, and saying that he lied because he lied. So so they, because they're attached to Abu Yad, for example, their natural reaction is to defend their noble brother because they see him in high status. You understand what I'm saying? So don't put don't put anybody above Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, ever, right? The third is what you say and how you say it and what you do. All of this is dawah, all of it, right? So what do I mean by this, right? Talk to people the way that you would talk to your mother, and you'll be more successful in making dawah, 100%. If you would talk to people, if you just look at people, anybody, right, that you're talking to, right, that disagrees with you, and you talk to him or her with the respect that you would talk to your own mother, then you will be much more successful in making dawah. People will be much more receptive on what you have to say. A lot of the times, especially with the youth, they think that what they have to do is beat people over the head with Quran and Hadith. And sometimes that's just not the issue. It's just a person might not have a problem with accepting Quran. A person might not have a problem with accepting Hadith. What they have a problem with is the way that you said it. You see what I'm saying? For example, think about your favorite food. Whatever that food is, just think about your favorite meal, right? For me, I'm from Trinidad, right? My parents are from Trinidad, so I like roti, right? So curry goat roti for me, right? So, and think about the way that you like that meal prepared. It's perfect, right? And it's your favorite meal with your favorite dessert and your favorite drink, okay? And everything's prepared for you. And the person who's presenting this meal to you gives you your favorite meal with your favorite dessert and your favorite drink, and he gives it to you in the lid of a garbage can lid. They present it to you like this. Would you eat it? No, you wouldn't. Even if it's your favorite food, even if the garbage can lid was clean, you would not eat it. Why? Because the way it was presented to you. And this is why people reject what people have to say when they approach them with rudeness. When they say, Ya Jahil, can you talk to your mom like that? Ya Jahil, you Juhal, you ignorant. How can you say this? Your sister says it like this, and this person is like that. And when people speak like that, they will not be receptive to anything you have to say after that, because you approach them in the wrong way, no matter how many ayahs, Quran, or hadith that you told them. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he never spoke to people like this in making da'wah. And he was alone. He was talking to the mushrikun of Quraysh, right? Those people were rough. So, okay, so sorry about that. The last two that I want to say, it could have gone either way, but I pretty much put it in this order. If you just follow the last two, you should be fine, right? So number two is be stoic in your approach to Islam. What do I mean by that? So when you're practicing Islam and when you're talking to people, the first thing you should be thinking is, how would the Prophet Muhammad SAW speak to this person? How would he do it? Right? How would the Prophet Muhammad SAW approach this situation? Right? That's what I mean by be stoic. Right? And sometimes in certain situations, it's more appropriate to approach a situation with one of the imams of the Salaf, right? So what do I mean by that? So for example, if you look, for example, at the four madhahib, right? If you look at Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. Now Abu Hanifa, first of all, Abu Hanifa, he was someone he's not from the people of hadith, first of all, right? As a matter of fact, he's considered da'if in hadith, right? That's another story. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is not to get anybody triggered or anything like that. But the reason why I'm mentioning it is this is like, how did his madhab survive, right? If he's not from the people of hadith, if he's da'if in hadith or whatnot, it's because the way that he approached hadith was, he would extract so much fiqh from one hadith. He would wear it so thin and come up with so many ideas that it's just hard to ignore the level of hikmah that he had. For example, when the Khawarij were approached for that debate, right, and they were saying that they had the problem with Muawiyah was that he made Islah. The problem with Ali was that he was trying to make Islah with Muawiyah, right? And that's why they wanted to fight Ali. Then they were asked, well, did you not see the ayah of Quran where Allah, he says that and if you can make Islah between a husband and a wife, right? If that could be reached so that they don't get divorced, right? And they said yes. So then they said, well, how much more the Amir al-Mu'mineen, how much more the leaders of the Muslims, right? So the fiqh was extracted from the ayah like that, right? Nowadays, right? Well, with the Sa'fuk, they would say, well, where's your hadith to prove this? You know what I mean? But that's why Imam Abu Hanifa, his madhab is so important, right? Because the way that you can think about different ways that you can think about approaching hadith and ayat of Quran and like that, ayats of Quran like this, right? Imam Malik, rahimahullah, the reason why his madhab was so important is because all the hadith of the benefits and the the special characteristics of Medina, right? There's so many hadith like that. So there's always going to be a place in Islam which was, basically upon the haqq, which is Medina, right? So the idea that the shayukh from Medina are misguided, like some of these Sufis say, is just ludicrous because there's so many Sahih hadith about the virtues of Medina, so many, right? And that was Imam Malik, rahimahullah, his approach, right? And Imam Shafi, rahimahullah, the reason why his madhab is so important because he was one of the first from among the Salaf to openly oppose his teacher, and his teacher just happened to be Imam Malik, right? To show the people that you don't have to blind follow anybody, to the point where Imam Shafi, rahimahullah, he was actually beaten by those people who were mutashaddid and who were blindly following Imam Malik and some people say that this is the reason why he died. Some people say he died of a stomach problem, but basically, that's what happened to him. But he showed the people you can actually, a student can oppose the teacher. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, uh, his approach was very open, and he lived in a time where it's called the golden age of hadith, right? So many hadith were available, and he and to be honest, the Hanbali madhab is the most flexible of all of the madhab, right, that survived. Of course, there are many other madhab, but anyway, why am I saying all this? Right? The point is that if you are stoic in your approach to Islam, if you look back to, even if you're not gonna, if it's not appropriate in certain issues, to say what would the Prophet Muhammad SAW do in this situation, there's always somebody else you can look at. Like, for example, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. What would they do in this situation? Always look back, right, and see how they would handle the situation, right? And but as particularly try your best to be stoic in following the Prophet Muhammad SAW. And of course, the last one and the most important, in my opinion, is to know that Allah He's always watching you, right? Allah is always watching and recording everything that you're doing. So if you want to, like, for me, for example, even before, and I'm not saying this to try to make myself look like something, because I'm not. I'm only doing this as an advice to people who want to, basically show some sort of ikhlas in the way that they approach things. So for me, for example, before I even made this video, I made sure I made wudu. I made 2 rakats. I thought about it intensely, and then I made the video. I just didn't just come out and just start talking. You see what I'm saying? Right? Because I know that Allah is watching me, and if I say something, right, that is wrong, then I can be punished for that, right? Especially when you're talking about people. Especially when you're talking about people. Because it's not permissible in Islam to attack the honor of Muslims. So if you're going to attack the honor of a Muslim, you better have a really good reason to do it, because you'll be asked about it on Yawm al-Qiyamah. No doubt. And you are putting yourself in a position to eat the flesh of the dead flesh of another Muslim. So I want to make sure that I'm getting the guidance from Allah. You have to understand something, that anybody with a mouth, and anybody who has the ability to speak, and anybody who is speaking about Islam will make a mistake. They will. It's a must. They have to make a mistake. Allah hasn't made it from his way, from his sunnah. He hasn't made it that any human being is without mistakes except for the Prophet Muhammad SAW. He's the only one without any, right? So to go around following up the mistakes of people and then refute them and say this one is like this and this one like that, it's not only is it ludicrous, but it's going to put yourself in a position to earn Allah's anger, because this is not done by youth and laymen ever in history. And as a matter of fact, Sheikh Abdul Razak bin Abdul Muslim al-Abad, he said that this is the first time he's ever seen this type of fitna where ulema get speaking bad about on at this level. He hasn't even heard of this in history like this, right? And we know who these people are, the South Africa, who are doing it, right? So if you can do all of these, right? If you can follow these 5 points, right? And like I said, you're not obliged to. These are the 5 points that I personally follow, right? I thought about it well, and I don't go, when I speak to anybody, I always speak to them like I'm talking to my own mother, and I talk to them in a manner that will get my point across so they can see it from my point of view. And I have no problem to say if I'm wrong. I have no problem saying, yes, I made a mistake here. I made a mistake there. I don't know. It's not that big of a deal, and you shouldn't be embarrassed if you made a mistake. Just admit you made a mistake, because every single human being will make a mistake. It's even me. I'm sure. Like I have all these videos. I'm positive there's a mistake in there somewhere. I know, right? Maybe here, maybe even this one right now, this video right now, right? I know that I made a mistake because I'm a human being, right? But to go now and follow out the mistakes of people, you have your own problems to be worried about to run around following out the mistakes of other people. You know what I mean? Leave that to the ulama, because the ulama are the ones who fear Allah the most. So as for you, um, if you approach Islam in a stoic manner and in a way that you understand Allah is watching you, and if you yourself uh, present the best manners and attitude and positive attitude and smiling face, and always say I don't know when you actually don't know, don't answer questions that you don't have the ability to answer, and admit your mistakes. If you do that, then people will have a good idea about Salafis and Salafiyah and Islam in general, if you can do that, right? And you can't be worried about what other people are doing. If you want to change the ummah, you have to change the ummah in yourself first before you change the ummah outside. And when people start seeing that you have good character and you have good manners, that type of good manners is infectious. People are they gravitate to people who are good mannered and are smiling and like this, right? And this type of good manners is actually from the natural disposition of Islam anyways, right? When Allah says to call the people with hikmah, right? Call the people to Islam with hikmah, right? So if Allah says to call the people to Islam with hikmah, and you don't call the people to Islam with hikmah, then you've actually opposed the Quran itself. So either you call the people to Islam with hikmah, right, and good manners and exalted character, or you just don't call the people to Islam, because it's not wajib. I mean, it's not fard ayn on the people to call the people to Islam. It's some people have to do it. It's fard kifaya. Not everybody has the disposition to do it. So if you don't have the disposition to do it, just don't do it. And those people who are harsh, show them good manners. And when they insult you, you compliment them. And when they make dua against you, you make dua for them. You see what I'm saying? Don't fall into that trap. Don't go for this tit for tat type of thing, and I will never forgive you. Don't do this, because on Yom Kippur, if you forgive people, then Allah will forgive you. And I hope this helped. I know it's kind of long, but I wanted to answer it in a way that hopefully would reach the people, because this question has been answered so many times, right? So I hope to give a different spin on it. Subhanallah wa bihamdik wa shada la ilaha ant wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.